All right. I hope you all had a wonderful intermission. I missed you all so dearly. Quick update. Someone in the crowd, give me a black toonie. Who was? Right there. Who was it? Oh, thank you so much. Now, in addition to getting the black toonie, what's your name? Val, thank you so much. In addition to getting the black toonie from Val, I also got a brief government/history lesson from Genna backstage.
We're a constitutional monarchy.
I would just like to clarify, I thought you guys were kind of like Australia, where you're like, the Queen, pish posh. I have learned not the case. No. So
kind of the suck-ups of the Commonwealth, I would say.
Didn't you forget to take the homework, Professor Elizabeth?
That's kind of the vibe, yeah, and it served us really well.
Anyway, I will be laughing about this as I keep it in the Shubio forever.
What's good? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the titular Newest Olympian. I'm a 32-year-old man who never read the Percy Jackson books as a kid, but I read them as an adult because I was on a quest to determine if society had been sleeping on the Percy Jackson series. I said yes, and now I'm seeing if society has also been sleeping on the Heroes of Olympus series. Doing a little bit of an intro here just to give context to this episode because I was taught by other podcasters to always act as if every episode is someone's first time listening to the podcast. So rather than go full in medias res, I want to make sure that you all understand what's happening. So we are going to be covering chapter 4 of The Son of Neptune in this episode. The first half of the episode will be the second act of the Toronto live show, which made up most of our previous episode. And then after the break, we will then do the rest of chapter 4, which was done after the live show recording. So just wanted to give that context. So what you will now hear is the continuation of the live show. Once we got back from intermission, you heard the very beginning portion of coming back from intermission in the intro, and now we will get into that chapter 4 discussion, both at the live show and after the fact. So please enjoy.
Let's get into chapter 4 of The Son of Neptune, which is called Percy, but we're going to retitle it. Now I was excited again. I was like, okay, cool, still Percy. Let's see how long we can keep this streak alive. Chapter 4 begins with, quote, "On the way out of camp, Hazel bought him an espresso drink and a cherry muffin from Bombolo, the two-headed coffee merchant." And then the story keeps going. As if it didn't say, from Bombolo, the two-headed coffee merchant. Rick, you can't gloss over this. There's a two-headed coffee merchant named Bombolo. I need to know everything about Bombolo.
Bombolo needs his own book. Bombolo book. Bombolo book.
I can only imagine that Bombolo is best friends with Tom Bombadil, and they go on wild adventures together, drinking coffee, wearing yellow boots, and singing in rhyme. But oh my gosh, if there's no return of Bombolo, I will go to Rick Riordan's house. I'll go to Vancouver where they're filming the show, and I'll be like, Rick!
Sometime in your next 110 books, I need a Bombolo one.
Please, I will write it. Me and Marcus Shiro can write it. Move over, Rick. So, Percy devours the food and thinks that if he could just shower, change his clothes, and sleep, he'd be golden. Quote, maybe even imperial golden. And you know, jokes. Rick smirked and hit the period real hard. Blop, blop, enter. Newsline. Oh, it's great. I love it. It's perfect. So Percy notices the bathhouse, and Hazel says that hopefully they can go before dinner because if you haven't Roman bathed, you haven't lived. Percy asks if the campers are divided into different cabins. Hazel says, sort of. They have 5 cohorts, each with about 40 kids. The cohorts are then broken down into barracks of 10, kind of like roommates. And then Percy does some quick math to know that there are 200 kids at the camp, and he says aloud that the gods must have been busy. Hazel laughs and says it's not all from the major gods. Some are from one of the hundreds of Roman minor gods. Okay, I remember that being more of a thing, so we're establishing it's more of a thing. She adds that also many of the campers are legacies, kids with parents or grandparents that are demigods.
Those squeals you hear are all the Persebeth shippers. When they learn that this is a thing.
That is one of the first things I saw. I was like, ooh, okay, it's on the table. I'm glad that this is the good version of legacy, not my dad went to this school, so I get to go. Percy is very surprised because he just never thought that this could be a thing. So Percy is shocked. Hazel is shocked that he's shocked. But Percy isn't really sure of why he's shocked, other than that his last few days were so stressful that he couldn't fathom the thought of a demigod making it to adulthood. So then he goes, so the Legos, and she goes, legacies. They have powers like a demigod? And like we're a couple sentences in and I'm just ready for Percy asks a bunch of questions that we're all wondering and I'm here for it. It's a good chapter to have. We need it. It's important. It's fun. I don't care. It's great.
As someone who gets lost frequently while reading, it's like, please explain, help me.
It's good. It's like when you're watching Scooby-Doo or some other mystery show and then halfway through the episode, they do the thing where they're like, here are the 4 suspects and here's the things that were suspicious that they did.
In the end, the villain's like, let me recap.
Yeah. So Hazel says that sometimes yes and sometimes no. They have powers like a demigod, but they can be trained. She explains that all the best Roman emperors and generals claim to be children of the gods, and most of the time they were. She then says that Octavian is a legacy and a descendant of Apollo, and he supposedly has the gift of foresight. And Percy picks up on the supposedly and asks about it, and Hazel makes a sour face and says, you'll see. Percy doesn't have a good feeling about this guy being responsible for his fate, as the previous chapter ended. Percy then asks if the cohorts are done based on godly parent, and Hazel says, what a horrible idea, which is correct.
No.
It was wild when I read Harry Potter that they did this. It is wild that they did this in the Percy Jackson books. Like, I kind of get it as a motif in a YA series. I get it. But just like logistically, for the good of the development of the campers, it is not good to be just completely surrounded by like-minded people the entire time.
I like this cultural difference between the camps thing.
Yes.
They want, each side thinks the other's uncivilized in some way.
It's so good. It's so good. And it doesn't matter what it is. It's the sorting. It is the, we have tattoos and you don't. Like, it's everything and it's great.
Which is worse, putting kids by parent or smart, brave, evil, and miscellaneous?
I would say smart, brave, evil, miscellaneous because at least like people can be of the same parent and be different. We didn't see a lot of that in
doesn't
the
recognize
Percy
the
Jackson.
potential for change. Yeah, the pedagogy of Hogwarts, we have problems. You're right.
Oh, yeah. But
We're
I
not
like
talking about
this.
that.
I think this is important that they do this because I went to Rice, which is a university in Houston, which is a city in Texas, which is a state in America.
Thanks.
And do Canadian schools have like Greek life, like
Not really.
frats,
Like, occasionally,
sororities?
not really.
Okay.
No.
It's weird
Not
that they
like
have.
US.
It's weird that we do that. Rice had a thing where, like, instead of that, you just got randomly assorted into one of 11 residential colleges, and then that was kind of like the Greek life where you did, we would play against each other in sports, and like you would have colors and a crest and all this kind of stuff. But what was cool is you then, for your roommate situation, you would just get paired with like these wildly different people, and because of that, my roommates my senior year, there were 8 of us in one like big double suite kind of thing. It was like me, 2 other engineers, a theater major, a physics major, an economics major, a history major, and
That's cool.
yeah, like it's all different walks of life. And now like these friends are some of my closest friends. Michael Hollis, who you've heard on the podcast a lot. Like, I don't know that there's a world in which we're friends. Yes, thank you for the clap. Michael Hollis fans are in the crowd.
We're going to tell him he has his own fans. He's going to get such a big head about it.
But I don't know if him and I become friends unless we're like shoved together because of this system. So I think it's cool that
I have a friend from university here with me today.
let's go friendship.
And that was redacted years ago, but a lot.
Yeah, a couple of weeks I'm going to my 10-year college reunion. Terrifying. This is the last year that I get young alumni discounts to Rice alumni events because
hurts.
now I'm officially old. I did when we were doing the show. They had 2 stools up here on the stage, and I asked the guy, could I have a chair with a back, please?
Canadians will know the pain of no longer being a youth, according to Via Rail, which is age 26. You're no longer a youth.
Tough. Yeah, for I guess in America, it's more of like when you do the age drop down and you're in the like 26 to 35, you're like, so you got to scroll a little bit more. Disgusting.
Not disclosing any information, but it keeps going after that.
Oh, no. Don't remind me. Anyway, Percy Jackson. So Hazel says that officers decide where to assign recruits, adding that she's glad that that's the case, otherwise she would be alone. And Percy doesn't say anything about it, but it is funny knowing that
Like,
he's...
wait a second.
Well,
This sounds a
that
little
sounds
familiar.
really familiar.
Yeah.
Percy asks, who's your godly parent? But before she can answer, of course, a ghost from behind them yells, wait! And it's Vitellius, an old man ghost who was asking if Percy is a new recruit for the 5th cohort. He begins to inspect Percy and asks pressing questions such as, can he fight? Does he clean stables? And does he have all of his teeth? Hazel gives Percy a look to say, just humor this guy. And she's got a very expressive face. We've had multiple instances of Hazel communicating with facial expressions.
I'm very hung up on what he's going to do with the teeth. What do they need the teeth for?
Why do we need the teeth? Hopefully it is not related to the stable cleaning. Vitellius rambles on about how the 5th cohort was special back in Julius Caesar's day, but it's not the case today. He thinks that Hazel's choice of weapon, a spatha, is silly. He thinks that Percy smells like a Greek sewer and that he should take a bath. Hazel suggests Vitellius, who is so far basically our less fun Coach Hedge in this book, she suggests that he help Frank take inventory of the armory, and then he goes, quote, Mars Almighty, they let the Probatio check the armor, we'll be ruined. And maybe he's good. Maybe he's cool and fun, because that's a good vibe. So I was out on him initially. I'm back in. He's potentially cool. I'm not sold yet, but he at least has the potential.
Vitellius is the name of a real Roman emperor.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of that. Octavian, Vitellius. We'll see if there's more. After he leaves, Percy goes, okay, which I've never seen written before, but O-H-H-K-A-Y is definitely okay. Hazel acknowledges that he's eccentric, and clarifizes that he has been around almost since the Legion was founded. Percy asks what he meant when he called the Legion fulminata, which is a thing that he did, but I didn't write my notes before. Then Hazel translates that to, quote, armed with lightning. She says that it's their motto. The 12th Legion existed the entire Roman Empire, and when Rome fell, many legions vanished. Their region went underground and followed Jupiter's secret orders. Stay alive, recruit demigods and their children, and keep Rome alive. They've kept up these orders ever since by moving to wherever Roman influence was the strongest. Apparently, that has been America the last few centuries. And I'm sorry, does Italy not exist in the Percy Jackson universe? Imagine this being on Jeopardy. This country has the most Roman influence of all the countries. What is Italy? No! It's America, Ken Jennings!
They went underground. They went so underground that they hid it from the first 5 books. Yeah.
I get that you just got to do it, and thankfully, narrator Percy immediately comes in with the save. Quote, as bizarre as that sounded, Percy had no trouble believing it. In fact, it sounded familiar, like something he'd always known. So I appreciate that Rick is always here to do something wild and then basically be like, guys, it's a book. I have to do this. I have to do this. I know Italy is real. I have to do this. Italy is real.
Birds are real.
My mom,
Italy
according
is real.
to Ancestry.com, is like 34% Italian, meaning I might be 17% Italian, so it's real. For the folks at home, I pinched my hands in pinching a movie.
In for Canadians, the East Side Mario's gesture. Yeah.
The East Side what? I need to know this.
It's a Canadian fast casual Italian restaurant.
East Side Mario's?
East Side Mario's, and they have the potentially slightly culturally insensitive motto of a bada boom, bada bing.
Oh, no.
And in the commercials, historically, they went like this. And cast with violently non-Italian people.
A bada boom, bada bing. I'm more upset that they didn't do the order of it right. It's a bada bing, bada boom. I'm more upset.
I can't emphasize enough how zero number of Italians were involved in this.
God, that sucks. It
slaps. The cheese capoletti
I have
crew.
successfully never been to, like, we have one in America called, I think, like Sweet Tomatoes or something. Like, I've never been to an Italian fast casual because where I grew up, I'm pretty sure, like, the people from my hometown in New Jersey would murder me. Like, a beacon would go off there.
You're going to wake up and they're going to be looming over you in bed.
The Italian grandmothers and my friends just fly in, slit my throat.
Attack of the Nonas. Revenge of the Nonas.
Revenge of the Nonas. Yeah. They sliced me with a pizza wheel. No!
I think we got a movie concept. TM,
Yeah.
Revenge of the Nonas.
This is it. Anyway, Percy Jackson. So Percy moves on to guessing that Hazel is in the 5th cohort, which isn't the most popular cohort. And I'm guessing, this would be cool, at this point I wrote, okay, Percy is for sure joining 5th cohort and bringing them glory, but we'll have to see. Hazel says that she joined last September, which Percy notes, not the smoothest move. Hey, that's like right before that Jason guy went away, right? And then he can tell he immediately hit a nerve because Hazel goes silent and looks down for a long period of time. Now, after this awkward silence, she tells Percy that she will take him to her favorite view on the camp. So they stop outside the main gates, which are at the highest point, so you can see almost everything. Quote, the road led down to the river and divided. One path led south across a bridge up to the hill with all the temples. The other road led north into the city, a miniature version of ancient Rome, unlike the military camp. The city looked chaotic and colorful with buildings crowded together at haphazard angles. Even from this far away, Percy could see people gathered in the plaza, shoppers milling around an open-air market, parents with kids playing in the parks. A fun description, and Percy is surprised that they have families here. Hazel explains that when you are welcomed into the Legion, you do 10 years of service, and afterwards, you can leave whenever you want. Most go into the mortal world, but some stay back because it can be pretty dangerous outside the camp, and camp is the only safe place for them on Earth, and they can go to college, they can get married, they can have kids, and retire. And I mean, that's pretty cool. If you want to be more of a homebody, you don't want to, have the desire to explore the world, you just want to stay safe, you don't want to risk death, sure, yeah.
Why do Greek demigod children have such a low life expectancy? What?
You've read the first 5 books. We've got our Lee Fletchers of the world out there.
Maybe the Roman ones aren't tasty to monsters.
Well, I think the implication is that the Roman ones are just as at risk, but they can stay at the camp, whereas Mr. D and Karen are like, you guys got to get out of here. We're out of bunks.
Right, yeah. Okay.
And there's no magic that we can do to make more of them. You have to leave.
And then you're just going to die really soon. It's not like there's a whole bunch that they're meeting out in the world. They're just done.
Get out, do some stuff. Mate. Percy
become a monster snack.
Percy still can't believe that adult demigods could exist. He then asks, what happens if the valley is attacked? And Hazel says that they have magical borders and other defenses, but they aren't what they used to be because monsters continue to attack and they just won't stay dead for long recently, just like the Gorgons had done. Percy asks if she knows the root of the issue, and Hazel hesitates but says that it's complicated and begins to say that her brother says that death isn't, and I'm thinking, brother? Who's your brother? But then, of course, I'm also thinking, okay, what were you going to say? But then, I didn't expect this line. I feel like this is one of those, you could show me a bunch of lines before I read this book, and it's like, which one of these lines did not appear in the book? I would have picked this one. Quote, she was interrupted by an elephant. Didn't expect she was interrupted by an elephant.
The Romans did really take elephants into battle as early as 280 BCE.
And that's bad. You're hurting the elephants. They're not meant to hold that much weight on their backs.
And they're creatures of peace. They're not creatures of war. They don't belong in war.
If you're ever traveling somewhere and they offer for you to ride on an elephant, don't do it. It's not good. It's bad. And if you have done it, I won't tell anyone. Your secret's safe with me. Quote, Hazel dragged Percy out of the road as a demigod rode past on a full-grown pachyderm covered in black Kevlar armor. The word elephant was printed on the side of his armor, which seemed a little obvious to Percy. Very good. So then it heads towards a field with fortifications that are under construction, and Percy goes, what the? And Hazel says, elephant. And Percy goes, yeah, I read the sign. So good.
It's good. The dad
good.
jokes.
So
he
good.
didn't forget how to crack a dad joke.
I love it. It's such a
fundamental part of who he is.
It's great. It's such a New York vibe too. It's fantastic. So then Percy asks, why do you have an elephant in a bulletproof vest? And Hazel says, it's for the war games tonight. And at this point I wrote in my notes, okay, this is not just capture the flag. We have bulletproof vest elephants. What's going on?
Implies bullets are going to be involved.
Hades, the video game, has guns, so I guess Camp Jupiter does too. Now, Hazel says that this elephant's name is Hannibal, and he gets upset when he's left out. And Percy goes, well, we can't have that. Very good. It's very good. Hazel laughs, and at this point, just because this was kind of cute, I'm thinking, Hazel, don't fall for him. Don't fall for him, Hazel. Not that I'm worried about Percy, because he seems pretty locked in where I got to stick with this Annabeth person. But I don't want Hazel to swoon over Percy, and then Percy have to be like, no.
I do want that.
Why, you like mess?
I love mess. But also, I love a good yearning. I love a bit of pining. That's what we need in this series.
But we can have yearning and pining and not have, I guess it would just suck to know that it won't
Faded, fruitless yearning and pining. I am an Austen lover. Bring it.
Percy thinks that it's nice to see her happy since she was being all sad and moody before, and then he wonders what she was going to say. And then he thinks it's odd that she has a brother, but also that she says that she would have been alone if the camp was sort of a godly parent. And there's a couple options here, but I would love one mortal banging two different gods.
Right, because we have had the same mortal parent, same godly
God,
parent.
but
And obviously we've had same godly parent, different mortal parent. But the flip side of that.
It'd be so good. Oh, just to have the gods
Human that gets around with multiple gods.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
Please. Now, another thing that could be really cool, adopted sibling. That would be fun.
Yeah.
So that's at least the two theories I
And
threw out
wait a minute,
initially.
cross-cultural Roman Greek sibling?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like since she is at the stage of I don't know that the Greek demigods
they don't know,
exist. I don't think, but that could be very cool later on. And I guess technically we would have gotten that with Jason and Thalia, but I think
Wait, they are. Yeah, they're kind of cross-cultural.
we're just now she's a hunter, but like she's on the Greek side of the equation. We know where she falls. Percy finds Hazel very puzzling. He thinks that she's more mature than a normal 13, he guesses, year-old. But she seems like she's hiding a deep sadness, like she's guilty. And of course, we'll learn about this at the end of the book.
This is the same power he uses to tell that the brand of the armor on the elephant is Kevlar. He also can look into her eyes and see all that. Yeah.
Hazel points to some red flashes and dark clouds that are showing up near Temple Hill and says that Octavian must be busy, so they should head over there. And the narrator, Percy, says, quote, on the way, they pass some goat-legged guys hanging out on the side of the road. And I just thought this was kind of funny, given that Percy has a best friend who's a satyr, and at this point, they're just some goat-legged guys.
Some goat guy.
Now, one calls out to Hazel and jogs or trots or goats over. He's wearing a Hawaiian shirt. He has an afro with rainbow-tinted glasses and a sign that says, will work, strike through, sing, strike through, talk, strike through, go away for denarii. And I guess Uncle Rick just looked at do you guys have Spirit Halloween over here? Okay. I guess Uncle Rick looked at the Spirit Halloween thing for hippie and was like, yeah, done. So a very similar vibe to what we saw Juno having earlier. And Hazel immediately goes, hi, Don, sorry, we don't have time. And I was like, oh, she does not like this guy. He is awkward.
Satyrs are like an underclass here. I guess fawns. Yeah.
Yes, it's not a good situation. He does not take the hint at all and walks along with them, asking about the new guy and asking for money for the bus because he left his wallet at home and needs to get to work. And Hazel informs him that fawns don't have money or jobs or homes and there's no buses here. And then he says, right.
He's a hustler. Yeah.
He then says, right. But do you have denarii? And Percy very astutely asks, your name is Don the Fawn? Percy, always asking the important questions. Very good. Percy's confused about him having a job, thinking, don't the fawns just work for the camp?
Yeah,
and
they're
Dawn
companions.
finds this absurd.
More cultural differences.
Very different. Hazel clarifies that fawns are free spirits. She says, quote, they hang out here because, well, it's a safe place to hang out and beg. We tolerate them, but then she's caught off by Dawn, explaining that he loves Hazel because she tells him, please go away, instead of the standard go away.
Yeah, she's so angelic. She tells me, please go away. Mm-hmm. She really respects me.
Yeah, and again, this is another thing that kind of keeps coming up in these Rick books, that like the way he does homeless people is like kind of weird.
He does use the word homeless here, so it reads a little dated.
That's fine, but I just don't get why. Like, why was this the quirky vibe of what the satyrs are? Like, why can't they just be freeloaders and not, like, you can achieve the same effect and it can
stigma?
Yeah, just do like, a kid who lives in his parents' house at age 35, deadbeat older brother kind of thing.
You didn't have to bring homeless into it.
Right.
Yeah.
It just feels weird.
Yeah, I was thinking that like some people might relate to this. Like what it made me think of is, these are different cultural contexts, and you could, if you imagine that you identify with satyrs, you could see like maybe you come from like an immigrant background, and in one place in the world, you are part of a privileged group.
Oh, okay.
And in another place in the world, you are highly stigmatized and marginalized. And like, people who are the same, they have the same capabilities, like so many things in common, but in one context, they're more marginalized. It made me think of that in a way. But it's a little gross the way he describes it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But let's get a fawn revolution started by Percy Jackson. Yeah. Percy thinks that this dude is harmless.
Can we give them a job? By the end of the book, I want them to have a job.
Yeah.
A good job that suits their skills.
Yeah. Or at least just, they're just doing something. They have a place at the camp where they're not just the annoying people. I guess that's what makes it the grossest. Is the general vibe is like
It's the way-
everyone hates these people.
It's the way
is the
other
vibe at
people
camp. Yeah,
treat them,
that's
and
what
that
sucks.
is normalized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Percy thinks that this dude is harmless, but he still is bothered by the situation. He just has this feeling that fawns shouldn't just be begging, so clearly he has this internal thing of like, well, at my camp, they do stuff. Don gets very excited at the sight of a shiny object on the ground. Hazel snatches it before he can, and Don is mad because it could have funded a year's worth of donut purchases. Percy thinks it was a diamond, but he wasn't sure, and then Hazel, in a shaky voice like she just saved Don from danger, tells him to please go away.
Her reverse superpower is that she shakes off diamonds that hurt you.
We'll see.
It's kind of like a diamond King Midas. Like, I don't know, it's weird.
She tells Percy to come along and begins to jog. Percy catches up and starts to ask about the diamond, but she asks him, please do not ask me about this.
They're doing a lot of this.
There's so much of this. What's going on?
There's
you
a lot-
know, we don't. Bah!
Camp Jupiter keeps too many secrets.
So many secrets. Chiron's going to be so impressed. He's going to be so impressed.
And I'm not. Don't hold it in. Be transparent.
But it's a book. They silently make their way to Temple Hill. They pass altars and vaults and statues, and Hazel points out the Temple of Bellona, goddess of war. We got there. Bellona, the goddess of war. And also Rhaena's mom. And I was like, I knew it. I said she had Clarice vibes. And I wonder, I guess I don't know enough about Bellona.
Wait. Is this a female Ares? Who's that?
So that was my wondering, and we'll just kind of have to see as the story goes if we learn more about Bellona. But my thought at first initially was, oh, goddess version of Ares. But then I'm thinking, or is it Athena? Because Athena technically is the goddess of war, but it's more of like, she's really the goddess of wisdom, but then she's also like the goddess of strategic war. So I wonder if this is supposed to be it, but like no one said anything. I'll learn about it as the book goes on, or when I talk to Dr. Moya. But at least at this point in time, there's options. But I'm thinking more like they care about war so much that they have a god.
They have a
and
pantheon
goddess.
for wars, yeah.
That's my thought. They pass a crypt adorned with skulls, and Percy says he hopes they aren't going there. And Hazel says, no, that's the temple of Mars Ultor. And Percy goes, Mars, Ares, the war god? And Hazel says, yeah, same guy, but Ultor means the Avenger. She says that he's the second most important god of Rome, and Percy is not stoked about that. Just seeing this building makes him angry for some reason.
Hera had fun giving him just enough.
I love it. He then points at the summit. That summit has the largest temple surrounded by clouds, and Percy guesses that it's for, quote, Zeus, Jupiter, and asks if that's where they're going. And Hazel, sounding a bit on edge, confirms and says that Octavian reads auguries there at the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus. And I wrote, Jupiter best and greatest. And then Percy just instinctually says, Jupiter the best and the greatest. Percy asks...
We need to have a new segment that's like Latin Corner with Mike because it's getting out of hand.
It's just me trying to beat Percy, who's going to say it the next sentence. And Percy asks, what's Neptune's title? The coolest and most awesome? Because Percy is 16 years old in the year 2011 or 2012, whenever this book came out. Hazel awkwardly tells him no and gestures to a small building the size of a tool shed
So
with
sad.
a trident covered in cobwebs above it. Percy looks inside and sees 3 dried, moldy
It's like
apples.
a coffee time inside. little
What is this reference?
little Canadian joke.
Is this like, did Tim Horton put him out of business?
It's like the truly dying coffee chain. I think when you go in there, they're like, "Who? What? Like, what do you want?
Are you sure?
Why is there a person in here?" Yeah, my favorite Canadian insult is to say that you look like you crawled out of a coffee time,
Ooh.
which is.
That's good. You're so nice, but your insults are so mean.
I actually think that their stuff is really yummy, but it's usually empty in there. Nobody knows. It's a mystery how they stay open. It's covered in cobwebs, a la Shrine of Neptune.
There we are. Now, Percy sees this and his heart sinks. Hazel apologizes and explains that Romans were afraid of the sea and only used ships if it was a must. Having a child of Neptune around was always a bad omen, so that kind of makes sense about why the vibes are off with the people and the ghosts and everything else. She says the last one who joined did so in 1906 when Camp Jupiter was in San Francisco. Then there was a large earthquake. There was a real large earthquake in the San Francisco area in 1906. This is American History Corner with Mike in Canada. Percy is downtrodden that even if he joined the camp, he wouldn't be loved. Quote, maybe if he did really well, they'd give him some moldy apples. But even so, standing on this altar makes him feel waves of power surging through his veins. So Percy opens up his bag, and he takes the only bit of food left in it, a stale bagel. But not just a stale bagel, a stale West Coast bagel.
Even
the worst.
Never, ever, ever again.
Don't.
I've learned my lesson. Don't any of you ever you cannot win a bagel-related conflict.
Don't talk to me about those Montreal bullcrap bagels. They're bad and the hole's too big and there's just sesame seeds. They suck anyway.
I can't make him see reason. I've tried.
I've seen reason. I've had the bagels. They're worse.
They're
Go to
a
New York.
different style of bagel.
And the style is inferior. Anyway, Percy Jackson. So Percy, even though he has this stale West Coast bagel, he puts it on the altar and thinks it's not much. And I wrote, yeah. And then he said, but it's something. And I wrote, is it? He asks Neptune to help him out.
Way out of proportion. The bagel hate is so high.
He asks Neptune to help him out. That's how you know his memory's gone, is that he's not repulsed. He asks Neptune to help him out and give him his memory back and tell him what to do. Percy's voice cracks when he says this, and he didn't mean to get all emotional, but he's just exhausted and scared and tired, and he's been lost for so long that he would love some guidance. And I'm feeling very emotional. Jason, I felt was just more confused. Percy seems very sad, and it really crushes me.
He's in the presence of his parent. This was like you're lost and you're tired, and then suddenly your mom is there or your dad is there.
Yeah.
That's how this would feel. He is, because they have a godly presence. Like he's truly with his parent. And like you would start crying.
Yeah, and I guess the difference is he has a good relationship with Poseidon, whereas Jason doesn't with Zeus. So when Jason was in Zeus' house, he was like, I hate this place sucks. Whereas Percy's more like, I wish my dad was here. He seems kind of nice sometimes. Hazel consoles Percy with a hand on the shoulder and says that it'll be okay because he's here now and he's one of them, which I appreciate. Hazel seems like a good friend. Percy, about this as the narrator, says, quote, he felt awkward depending on an 8th grade girl he barely knew for comfort, but he was glad she was there. And this is just the classic teenage thing where like the difference between a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old is significant.
Huge. It just did really remind me how young these kids are.
They're
like,
so young.
They're children.
And like it is valid. Like a 16-year-old, 13-year-old for sure, but it's also just very funny now being 32 and just being like 3 years, whatever. Bleh. Narrator Percy
Big deal at that age.
Yeah, big deal at that age for sure. Narrator Percy then says, quote, above them, thunder rumbled. Red lightning lit up the hill. Octavian's almost done, Hazel said. Let's go. And that is where we will end this act of the show. But...
Hello and welcome to the Son of Fortune Shubio edition once again, here with some updates about the podcast. First up, the ending of this episode will be me doing a live reading of the end of chapter 4, which does include a big plot twist. And if you want to see my reaction to learning this plot twist, the video version of that final portion of this episode is available on Patreon for all TNO patrons. We posted it a couple weeks ago, so you might have to scroll a little bit, but it's up there. We just did a recording of the Zoom call so you can see me and Genna with a full live chat replay and everything because we did it with YouTube Live. You can see the live reaction to that. So if you really want to see that, head on over to the Patreon. Speaking of the Patreon, there is a bonus episode that has partially been inspired by this Toronto live show. So up on the Patreon right now for all Super God tier patrons and above is a bonus video episode where I go through the entirety of the Bug Juice website, and then also I watch the Canadian House Hippo video. So if you want to see me exploring these wild parts of the internet that have been brought to my attention in recent episodes of the News Olympian, head on over and join the Super God tier or above at the Patreon. Other things, shout out to everyone who came to the Vienna, Virginia live show recently. It was such a blast. It was a packed house. It was so much fun. And we have 2 more shows before the year ends. We've got a live show in Dallas, Texas on December 15th and a live show in Austin, Texas on December 16th. I know for sure that the Austin show is going to be over a portion of Percy Jackson's Greek gods. I'm not sure if it's going to be a regular chapter episode or more of the Greek gods book for the Dallas show, but just follow at News Olympian on Twitter, Blue Sky, or Instagram, and I will be posting an update in the days leading up to the show. But beyond that, we have a whole bunch of live shows in 2025 coming your way, and I'm so stoked about these shows. Here's the lineup: Hartford, Baltimore, Richmond, Houston, St. Paul, Milwaukee, Des Moines, Chicago, Columbus, Cleveland, Montreal, and Buffalo. So if any of those cities is in your general vicinity, or if you're looking to vacation in any of these cities on particular dates, head on over to thenewsolympian.com/live. You can see the dates for all of those cities, and you can get tickets as well. I'm very excited because some have already started started popping off where there's certain shows where it's like, oh my God, is this show going to sell out very quickly? But head on over to thenewsolympian.com/live and secure your tickets. I'm very, very excited for these shows in 2025. And also from a programming perspective, we are going to be taking the last week in December off. December is a 5-Monday month. That is going to be in between Christmas and New Year's. Just feels like the right time to take a week off. So that will be a break, and then we'll get back into the mix on January 6th to continue our coverage of the Newest Olympian. January 6th, just a normal date to keep in mind. Nothing bad about that date has ever happened. Something specific to this episode, I would say skip ahead if you don't know the end of chapter 4 spoiler and you want to really figure out what's going on in real time by listening to the podcast. But here's where I'm going to now reveal the spoiler. At the end of chapter 4, we learn that Hazel's sibling is Nico. And it's very funny that I laid out my guess without remembering that I had guessed Hazel might be a child of Pluto. So that would have been a big giveaway. And then also, I did completely just forget about Hazel's physical description, where she's described as having dark skin. And then as the book goes on, it's very clear that Hazel is black. But at least in the initial description of her, it just said dark skin. And that is enough to make it clear that her and Nico would not have the same mortal parent, since every time Nico is described, he's pale, 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 pale. So it's funny that I still had my thoughts about who her brother is without thinking about these two key pieces of information, but just wanted to let it be known that, yeah, I realized that I goofed, but also I didn't, if you listen to the rest of the episode. Now, I mentioned the Patreon earlier. I want to give a shout out to the folks who have joined our Patreon most recently. So shout out to our new Super God tier patrons, Silja Anderson and Sarah Mengiafico. Shout out to our newest God tier patrons, Marley Fiesel, Jacob O'Donnell, Marie 662,000 or 662000 or 662000, and Kinsey Hamlin. And shout out to our newest Demigod tier patrons, Piwa Kawaka, Nemo, Alleyway, Eaton, and Rikia, Geo, Milo, but the O is a 0, Cole Harrison, Brianna Bryant, Son of the Sun, and Nia. Thank you all so much for your support. May Demeter bless you that when you are making a sandwich, you arrange everything properly so that when you eat the sandwich, all of the stuff inside doesn't fall out of the bread. Now, unless you are listening on Patreon, where you get access to ad-free and early release episodes, this episode definitely came out earlier than the standard for sure. You will now hear words from a few sponsors to make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of those ads will be read by me, and others of them won't be. The ones that aren't read by me are inserted locally. So if you live in Comoros, don't be surprised if you hear an ad in Comorian, French, or Arabic, all listed as official languages of the country. But once those ads are complete, we'll get back into this episode of The Newest Olympian, which will no longer be live. It will be a home recording. Hello. Oh, wow. Look at this. We are sounding different because we have determined, indeed, that is the time teleportation noise that we all universally use and recognize. But yes, basically what we have decided, as you probably understand since you downloaded this episode and it's got the title and everything, we basically are going to make one episode out of chapter 3, this episode out of chapter 4, and then I will be reading the last page of this chapter live. I had not read it before the show intentionally because a couple of people had recommended that I not do so. And unfortunately, there was just too much going on in the chapter. They were long, and not just long,
Beefy.
but also beefy in terms of, it was all just people asking questions or Percy asking questions and then people not answering them. So naturally, we're going to wonder aloud, what are the answers? And it didn't allow for us to finish everything. So now we're going to finish everything here, and we are going to pick up where we last left our heroes, which is they were about to talk to Octavian. Shall we just get right into it, or is there anything you wanted to say at the top, Genna?
Let's go.
Sweet. Awesome. So we are picking up. Narrator Percy had just said, above them, thunder rumbled. Red lightning lit up the hill. Octavian's almost done. Hazel said, let's go. So now we are going. As Hazel said, quote, compared to Neptune's toolshed, Jupiter's temple was definitely Optimus and Maximus, as we've all learned from our Latin lesson earlier. That means the best and the greatest.
Awesome. He's taken to it like a duck to water. He's like, I'm Latin guy now.
I love it. He's fully embraced it and it makes me really, really happy. Now, Percy, as the narrator, describes this temple as having a marble floor with mosaics and Latin inscriptions. It has a gold sparkled ceiling, and it is an open air temple. So it's very fancy. It sounds very cool. There is also a marble altar in the middle of the temple, and there is a kid in a toga doing a ritual in front of a giant statue of Jupiter who is clad in a giant toga, and he's holding a lightning bolt. But Percy instinctively knows that that's not what the Master Bolt looks like, and we get this exchange, which is so fun. "It doesn't look like that," Percy muttered. "What?" Hazel asked. "The Master Bolt," Percy said. "What are you talking about?" Percy frowned. For a second, he thought he remembered something. Now it was gone. "Nothing, I guess."
So there he's like, I know something about lightning. Yeah.
It's so good. I feel like it's almost as if someone stole it. Like there was a
thief?
a lightning
Like a thief
lightning
of the
bandit.
lightning?
Yes, right. Yes, there was a thief of lightning. So, speaking of lightning, this kid who's dancing about, he shoots out red lightning, and then above him there are clouds that change from gray to white and then break apart. So Percy asks, "What is this guy doing?" And this person doing the stuff turns around with a wild look in his eyes, like he was just playing an intense video game. And I really understand this feeling. Not that I get it now, but I remember distinctly when I got Jack 2, so the sequel of Jak and Daxter for the PlayStation 2. I remember on Christmas morning playing that for probably 8 hours consecutively. It was the first time I had bloodshot eyes because I was like 11 years old or something. And I remember being like, my eyes hurt. What's going on? And I like looked in the mirror and I was like, I look like those eye drop commercials with Ben Stein. So yeah, it was wild. So I understand the type of look that we've got going on here.
He was locked in to his ritual.
Absolutely locked in. Kelly gets this sometimes too. She will intensely focus in on a video game sometimes, so much so that she forgets to blink. So she will then have to wipe her eyes for a couple of seconds after finishing a race in Crash Team Racing, for example. This guy's got a knife in one hand and something that looks like a dead animal in his other hand, which narrator Percy thinks this isn't helping him look any more normal if he's got potentially a dead animal in his hand. Hazel then introduces this guy as Octavian, and Octavian goes, quote, "The Gracchus, how interesting." And Percy, ever the Percy, goes, hi, are you killing small animals?
And it's funny that he's a curiosity. It's like, interesting. Like this guy looks at people and objects around him as specimens.
Yes. He's very much looking at things not as a human, but as, I don't know, like he's conducting a big experiment, or people are things to be studied, not humans to be reasoned with.
He's a diviner, so he's kind of like almost not of this realm, right? Like he's truly, his head is in, he's thinking about the future, he's thinking about the divine. Yeah,
looking at the big picture, seeing how the strings intertwine. Octavian laughs at this notion of him killing animals and says, no, he says they used to do this in the past by examining animal guts, but now they use these. And he tosses the quote unquote animal to Percy, and Percy realizes that it isn't an animal. It's an animal lobster. No, it is a stuffed animal. It's a disemboweled teddy bear.
I love this.
Yes.
Excellent middle grade move. The middle grade move. No. We're not going to be pulling out literal entrails. That's going to be taking us to a different section of the library. So actually, we're just going to have some polyester fluff here.
It's good. I think it's a great workaround. Now, you had mentioned backstage that this is not what the book says it is. They say he's an augury, but that involves birds. And this is a different type of seeing the future, correct? A different type of prophesizing?
Yes. I couldn't nail down exactly the pronunciation, so someone can tell me if they know their ancient Greek. But this is haruspicy.
Okay.
And haruspics is the person who practices this type of divination, which is reading of entrails, reading of guts of dead animals. They refer to Octavian as an augur who practices augury, which is the divination where you're actually just observing the natural patterns of birds.
Yes.
You're just watching birds fly, and through looking at the patterns that they make in the sky, you divine the future. Maybe haruspicy is just a big word. I'm not sure how this happened. I also, as a birder, a regular birder, I don't tell the future by looking at birds. I tell things about birds by looking at birds. But I will be rebranding myself as an augur.
Nice. Yeah. Just start saying vague future things and no one can disprove you.
And bird watching has a dorky reputation. So we're going to give it a chic edge. We're going to add a little air of mystery by rebranding it as augury.
It's definitely not dorkier. It's definitely making it cooler.
It's cooler.
I think this makes sense, though, because when they had said augury, the only thing that I had knew about it was that in the Harry Potter books, there's a fantastic beast and where to find it. And it's called augury, and it's a bird. And then that made me think, oh, it's going to be something with birds. So when it wasn't birds, I was confused. And then we talked about it after the show, and I'm less confused. And now maybe the listener is less confused, but we will continue. So Octavian says that they're using these stuffed animals instead. And then Percy notices that there is a pile of them near the base of Jupiter's statue. Quote, Octavian stepped off the dais. He was probably about 18, but so skinny and sickly pale, he could have passed for younger. At first, he looked harmless, but as he got closer, Percy wasn't so sure. Octavian's eyes glittered with harsh curiosity, like he might gut Percy just as easily as a teddy bear if he thought he could learn something from it. So, an interesting vibe. I think we do have a vibe of this that he is more similar to the original Oracle as opposed to Rachel Elizabeth Dare, where original Oracle, Percy was kind of scared, thinking, is this person going to hurt me? And we have that vibe once again now with Octavian.
And anybody who can tell the future, they're going to be burdened, right? They know things that they can't tell others. And maybe he's seeing dark things in the future, and this is like burdening him.
And especially if he was an augury, he'd be burdened. Nice. Can you tell I'm back home and my daughter's in the other room? Dad powers activated.
The dad powers, like, this is a dangerous level of dadding. Like, you were already at peak dadding before the kid was even on the scene.
Oh,
We're now at a levels of dadding that have never yet been seen. We are going to be doing innovations in dadding. God help us if there's another child.
it's only going to get worse when she gets old enough to laugh at my dad jokes. Oh my gosh. Then it's going to be bad, because then I'm going to start like actively practicing them more so than I normally do. Oh, it's going to be terrible for everyone except for me. It's going to be great. Now, Octavian tells Percy that he seems nervous, and Percy says, "You remind me of someone." And I hate that my brain is broken where if I see or hear the phrase, "you remind me of someone," I think of, and this person's a bad person, and I don't listen to his music anymore, but it makes me think of R. Kelly, because R. Kelly, terrible human being who I won't give stream money to anymore, has a song called, it's called "You Remind Me of Something." And plot twist, "You Remind Me of Something" is his Jeep. And the whole song is, "You remind me of my Jeep, I want to ride you. You remind me of my sound, I want to pump you. You remind me of my car, girl, I want to wax you." So it's ridiculous. But the song begins with, "You remind me of something. I just can't think of what it is." So when Percy says, "You remind me of someone," I can't remember who. I unfortunately did hear it in R. Kelly's voice.
Unfortunately, as a Canadian, I am legally and legislatively bound to think of the Nickelback song, "How You Remind Me."
Oh, this is how you remind me of how I really am. Like, if we have that particular phrasing of it, but just the specific "you remind me of something" is how that song begins. Very whispery.
My Canadian powers are activated just by the words "remind me."
Yeah, gosh. Nickelback's Canadian?
Nickelback is Canadian and qualifies for CanCon. I don't know if you know what that is.
No.
Oh, of course. How would you?
How would I?
30% of all music played on the radio by law must be Canadian.
Oh, I have heard about this. I just didn't know the name of it.
And if you spend a certain amount of time in the U.S. or have other like U.S. businesses and stuff, then you no longer qualify for CanCon, regardless of whether you are Canadian. So it actually excludes a lot of people who like are maybe Canadian by birth. I don't know the exact rules, but that means that there's some songs that we have heard a lot.
And you know what? It's okay. I feel like we're getting back in the point now in 2024 that Nickelback and Creed, we are just embracing them. We recognize it's silly, bad music, but it's great. I always thought it was weird when people made hating Nickelback their entire personality.
Yes.
And I think we've kind of come back around of like, yeah, it's cheesy, but we like it. Sure, all the songs sound the same, but whatever.
As the kids say, I am cringe, but I am free.
Yeah, they're basically like the Fast and Furious of music, where it's just like, they're good and they're also terrible and they're all the same, but we like them. So whatever. You know, it's just the bad action movie franchise of music.
Yes.
And I think you can have a love for that. So
the Wattpad movie of music. My best friend and I have a deep and abiding love of Wattpad movies, which are innovating in the realm of bad movies. Levels of badness that previously have never been seen in movies.
Look at all these new levels. So anyway,
good.
Percy Jackson. Now, Octavian guesses that Percy saying "you remind me of someone," he says, "Oh, must be my namesake, Octavian, Augustus Caesar." Quote, "Everyone says I bear a remarkable resemblance." And yeah, that means you don't look like him at all. No. Percy doesn't think that's it. And then I realize, oh, it's Rachel Elizabeth Dare. He is reminding him of Rachel Elizabeth Dare, his good friend, who is also a teenager, but an oracle. Percy asks why Octavian addressed him as the Greek, and Octavian says that he saw it in the auguries. He says the message told him the Greek has arrived, either that or the goose has cried. So I would imagine it is the Greek has arrived.
Does this come to him like the whatever that board game is where they give you random syllables and you have to try to say it? That's basically like how he receives the divination. Yeah. I can't remember the name of the board game.
I know the game you're describing, though, and I can't think of it either, but I've definitely heard this before. Octavian asks Percy if he's trying to join the Legion, and Hazel explains everything that's been going on. Octavian was shocked at the mention of Juno, and the reason that he's shocked is because she only appears in times of crisis. And then he gives Percy a look, which makes narrator Percy think, am I the crisis? Is he saying with his eyes, only when bad things come around, like pesky Greeks? So
you're a bad omen. Also, you're a child of Neptune. We've already heard, right, that Neptune is no bueno.
Exactly. Percy asks him if he's been warned of the attack on the Feast of Fortuna, and Octavian sighs and says, sadly, no. The will of the gods is hard to discern, and these days my vision is even darker. And Percy says, don't you have, I don't know, an oracle or something? And then Octavian goes, an oracle? What a cute idea. No, I'm afraid we're fresh out of oracles. Now, if we'd gone questing for the Sibylline books like I recommended, and Percy, always being Percy, goes, the Sibyl what? And Hazel says, the books of prophecy, which Octavian is obsessed with. Romans used to consult them when disasters happened. Most people believe they burned up when Rome fell. And Octavian corrects that some people believed that, quote, unfortunately, our present leadership won't authorize a quest to look for them. Hazel says that the reason that they're not doing that is because Reyna isn't stupid. But then Octavian continues, so we have only a few remaining scraps from the books, a few mysterious predictions like these. And then he gestures to the inscriptions that are on the floor, which Percy looks at, and he is not expecting the ability to read them, but that innate Latin kind of kicks in
there.
And he reads one aloud, quote, 7 half-bloods shall answer the call, to storm or fire the world must fall. So we know this one, and Octavian finishes it, an oath to keep with a final breath, and foes bear arms to the doors of death. Percy's got a gut feeling that this is important. He thinks it's important, maybe like he heard it at the end of book 5. Octavian confirms its importance, identifying it as the prophecy of the 7. He says that it is several thousand years old, and they don't know what it means. He says that bad things happen whenever someone tries to decipher it, and he says, quote, Hazel can tell you, which feels very pointed. And I feel like we're going to get into that potentially next chapter, because it just feels very intentional of Octavian to say this, to go out of his way to say
it's going to be Hazel. Hazel's going to be important here. I also divined through this that I figured out that we were talking about the fall of the Western Roman Empire, because these books are real. This really happened. These books were real books of prophecy that people consulted. And the last known, I'm using Wikipedia here as a source here, so kick me out of school.
Wikipedia now has come around where it's more reputable than Google, because Google is just ads and AI-generated crap. So we've come 180, not full circle, 180.
Wikipedia forever, because if you put some crap on Wikipedia that doesn't belong there, someone's going to scurry along and fix it.
It's honestly probably the most reputable
great.
news source out there. It's nuts.
Honestly, it's so good. But the last time we saw the sort of last documentation of these books being seen is 363 CE, the fall of the Western Roman Empire, shortly after that. So we're talking about not the fall of the
Holy Roman Empire.
The Holy Roman Empire in the late medieval period. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fall of the Western Roman Empire. For the two people in the audience, like, oh, thank you. Thank you. What fall of Rome were we talking about? We've clarified. I also, reading this prophecy of 7 for the bajillionth time, I noticed something about it, which is that it says 7 half-bloods. It doesn't say 7 demigods.
Oh, interesting.
So they could be half anything.
That is a good thing to point out. I have said what I want to do is I think I should have a little thing behind here, my camera, when I'm doing most of my home recordings. I should have a little thing that just has the current prophecy. So if there's an individual one for the book or the big one, and then also the date that the book came out, because I'm always like, oh, what was it, like 2011, 2012? And I should just get that on a little piece of paper and just have it for reference.
Just have it,
so I didn't notice that. It is half-bloods. It could just be nothing, but it could be something.
It's probably nothing, because I have a 0% success rate with my predictions on this show.
Hey, you never know. You never know. Tyson could be in the mix, right? Who's to say?
Who's to say?
Now, let's continue. Hazel shoots dagger eyes at Octavian and says, just read the augury for Percy. Can he join the Legion or not? So feels like they've got a bit of a testy relationship. Percy can see the gears of Octavian's mind turning. He reaches out his hand towards Percy's backpack, saying, that's a beautiful specimen. May I? And Percy doesn't know what he's talking about, but then Octavian grabs the Bargain Mart panda pillow. And I forgot about the panda pillow. And I'm assuming this is like a pillow pet. I had a pillow pet in college. I had a Tigger pillow pet. I don't know if you ever had a pillow pet, but they are pillows that you can kind of Velcro in the bottom and they kind of look like stuffed animals.
I'm picturing like a jelly cat or a squishmallow, like a chunky guy.
Similar,
Could be a pillow
concept.
or a stuffed animal. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, Percy, surprisingly, is emotionally attached to this panda pillow because he's carried it all this way. He knows it's just a silly little toy, but it's been with him on this really tiresome journey. I appreciate that he has a connection to it. I think that's great.
I already had an attachment to it. I'm mad about it being slashed open.
Octavian slashes it open, slashes it right across the belly on the altar, much to Percy's dismay. He then chucks the panda aside and mutters over the stuffing a bit, and then with a smile announces, good news, Percy may join the Legion. He says they will give him a cohort, quote, at evening muster, which feels like a scrum meeting, but for demigods, maybe around dinner time. So we'll see what that means. And he instructs them to pass along his approval to Reyna. So Hazel seems relaxed, but not thrilled, more like she's happy that this is over, but not happy to still be here. She tells Percy to come with her, but Octavian stops her to start saying something about an upcoming Praetor election, which causes Hazel to snap at him, saying that Jason isn't dead and Octavian should be looking for him since he's the augur. Octavian points at the pile of fluff and says that he is, as he consults the gods daily, but he hasn't learned anything yet. He says if Jason isn't back by the Feast of Fortuna, they must act. And now I'm wondering, is the quest just going to be find Jason? Is there no external threat? Is it just, we got to get our friend back? And are they going to make their way to Camp Half-Blood? And that could be the thing, because as I have said, I think in either this episode or previous episode, it feels like book 2 is going to lead right into book 3, which is going to be them going to Greece. So this could have a situation where they're looking for Jason, they find him in Camp Half-Blood, they're all there, and then it's like Chiron just shows up and is like, all right, the Seven's here. Let's get on this boat and head on over to Greece. So that could be the situation, which would be very fun. I kind of like the quest just being find our friend and not defeat an evil person.
The quest is going to be get the gang together, but I think it's going to be get the gang together despite big evils in our way.
Exactly. And I think that is better because when you look at the 5 books for Percy Jackson, book 2 was kind of like, it was get the fleece and stuff, but it did feel a little side questy. And the big sort of overarching plot didn't really get hammered in until after book 2. So I think it's okay. And we get the Thalia thing of it all. But because from the start of book 1, we know the big thing, I wouldn't want some sort of thing that felt like a side quest. So if it is just, we got to find Jason, and it's a hell of a time finding Jason, then that'll be a fun book, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think that's what we're doing.
We'll see. Now, the truth comes out. Octavian starts by saying that they cannot have a power vacuum. That's why they got to have this election, but then continues to ask for Hazel's vote in the election. So, okay, this guy wants the seat for himself. He is a selfish monster in my eyes, and I bet he's withholding some information. I bet he's keeping some stuff back.
He is. He definitely is.
He's got to be. Now, you're saying this not knowing it because you haven't read past the next chapter.
I have not. Oh, yeah, I'm saying this. I'm not spoiling Mike.
Right.
Yeah, I'm spitballing. I don't know.
Hazel gets very upset at this notion. Octavian then removes his toga, I'm assuming he was wearing clothes underneath, and places it and his knife on the altar. Percy then sees 7 lines on his arm, thinking that it means 7 years at camp. And I think that makes sense. That was my guess when the other people had marks, and Percy had noted that Hazel was younger and she had 1 mark, and Reyna was about his age and had 4 marks. So I think that tracks.
It tracks, yeah.
Percy then sees that Octavian's tattoo, his little mark, is a harp, which is the symbol of Apollo. Now, then we get a weird quote from Octavian where he says, after all, I might be able to help you. It would be a shame if those awful rumors about you kept circulating, or, God's forbid, if they turned out to be true. I don't like this guy. I don't like blackmail. That's not cool. This guy sucks.
I don't like it. And this also made me wonder if Octavian was allied with someone somehow, and that Octavian has a bigger agenda of some kind, like the way that Luke was working with Kronos, or someone might be working with Ares in past books. Like this makes me feel like he has a agenda, and there's a reason why he doesn't just want to be Praetor. Like Praetor is a summer camp counselor position. Like in and of itself, it's not that special.
But he wants it.
So he wants it, and I think he wants it for some reason, and he's also willing to use fear to get his way.
Gotcha. I'm not going to go that far. I think he's just being selfish and he might be holding a couple of things back and then they'll later learn. And he's like, oh yeah, I knew this, but I didn't think it was a big deal to say like Jason's on the East Coast or like Jason was here a couple of months ago or something like that. So I think it's probably just him by himself. I don't think it's going to be a whole big thing, but that's just where I'm at right now.
I have no
We'll
idea.
see if he gets creepier as the story goes on. Percy then fiddles for Riptide in his pocket because he's ready. He doesn't like Hazel getting obviously blackmailed. He identifies it as obvious blackmail. And he says, quote, as the narrator, one sign from Hazel and Percy was ready to bust out Riptide and see how Octavian liked being at the other end of a blade. That is awesome. And that is exactly the type of trash talk Percy would have said out loud to someone. So I appreciate that as the narrator, he's keeping true to form.
Yep, the sassy internal monologue continues. Also, my new best friend of 5 minutes, I will kill for her.
Yeah.
Right now.
And that's how I
will,
am.
try
I
me.
love it. I'm loyal very quickly, and I appreciate that
Yeah.
he has the same sort of situation going on. Hazel takes a deep breath, but her fists are still clenched, and now her knuckles are white, so she's very upset. She tells Octavian that she will think about it, and Octavian says, excellent, and then informs her that her brother is here. Hazel is surprised and asks why he's here, and Octavian responds, why does your brother do anything? He says he's waiting for her at her father's shrine and asks her to make sure he doesn't stay too long because he has a disturbing effect on the campers. And I have a guess here. I think I already know who this brother is and what this plot twist is going to be. And then I wrote in my notes, quote, I think her brother is Nico D'Angelo. I've not read the next page. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not looking at any sort of reaction. I'm staring at my notes continuously to make sure that even Genna didn't do any sort of facial reaction. But here's what's going on. First off, we have Hazel saying that if the camp was sorted into by godly parent, she said she would be alone. So that would make it make sense of like, if her brother is Nico, why he's not here, why there wouldn't be anyone else at camp. So it would be the situation where she would be the only, I guess, daughter of Pluto instead of Hades. And that makes sense just in terms of like not a lot of kids Hades is supposed to have.
Yeah.
The real thing that set me off was he has a disturbing effect on the campers and tell him not to stay for too long. So he's not normally here and he creeps people out. That feels like Nico D'Angelo. The other big thing is that Nico hasn't shown up in the story yet. He didn't show up in the first book at all.
Right.
He's got to show up at some point in the series. There's no way he doesn't. They're not going to make future books about him. People aren't going to freak out about him without him being in the Heroes of Olympus. I thought he might be one of the 7. I was unsure because when they said it's got to be like a split of Greek and Roman, but we have this. Now, the other thing that makes me think that it's Nico is that previously we had Nico doing the dream stuff with Percy when Percy was like about to go along with Nico's plan. And Nico's like, oh, I'm busy doing this other stuff, scoping out the Titans on Mount Othris. And what we've learned from Jason is that he was there conquering Krios and defeating the temple and everyone there on Mount Othris. So it feels like there's a good chance that Nico either helped with that or knew what was going on or had some sort of interfacing with the Roman people. It would explain why Nico wasn't at Camp Half-Blood the entire first book.
Yep.
So I feel like there's a chance. I don't know the full backstory, but I'm thinking that this is who the mysterious brother is. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that lends it to it, but this is my guess before we even get into it. So I just wanted it to be like all laid out there with all of the explanations.
All right.
Also, Hazel D'Angelo just sounds like it could work. But I guess, she could have a different mother. So that could be the thing. I guess Nico could technically be her half-brother. That would make more sense than her being Hazel D'Angelo. So I guess being half-siblings, different mortal parent, would make more sense. It would be wild if we had all the stuff with Mrs. D'Angelo and Bianca and Nico, but then no Hazel.
I just realized that what's the naming custom? Because the gods don't have last names.
Yeah, it's always off the mortal's
It's always
last
off the
name.
mortal parent. I somehow hadn't figured that out just yet. Okay.
Hey, there
so
we go.
she wouldn't be, if she was just to happen to be
No,
a
she
child
wouldn't.
of
Right.
Pluto, which is the Roman equivalent of Hades, then she would have not surname Hades or Pluto,
Right.
but
Yeah,
surname from her mother. Yes.
That would really spoil the surprise element of
I'm John
of
McSeuss.
claiming, right? Hi, it's me, Percy Poseidon. Who do you think my dad is? Why does water act strange around me? My last name's Poseidon. Anyway, who do you think my dad is?
Couldn't imagine. Yeah. I can make
Who is
fish
it?
jump, but who knows? Yeah.
All right, but I will now continue on with the notes. So that's where I wrote in my notes. I think her brother is Nico D'Angelo. And Octavian ends this little paragraph to Hazel with, quote, "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to keep searching for our poor lost friend Jason. Nice to meet you, Percy." And this guy sucks. He's not taking the Jason thing seriously at all. I think he's trying to
not looking for
screw
Jason.
this thing over. No, he's not. He's trying to get this empty seat.
He's not
I
looking
don't
for
like
Jason.
this.
Yeah, he's
Sucks.
never looked for Jason. I'm going on the record right now that he's never done it.
He just likes destroying stuffed animals, and that's it.
Yeah.
So Hazel storms out. Percy follows, thinking that this must be the most excited he's ever been to leave a temple. And I'm trying to think, was there an example in the Percy Jackson books where he was really excited to leave a temple? I don't know that he ever was in like a really testy situation in a temple, unless you count like being on Olympus. But he was never like in the Ares cabin, or I think you would have to like stretch the definition of temple. I think this genuinely could be Percy just knowing, yeah, I'm really happy to leave, and innately I know this is the best time I've ever left a temple.
If there was another storming out of a temple, I'm drawing a blank on it.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. So we're going to start with, there was like a little page break thing. So technically by the paperback standards, I'm reading the last page and 7/8. Oh no, extra content that you weren't promised.
Oh,
so
no.
here's me reading it live. I won't like directly read the thing verbatim because I think I would get in trouble copyright wise. So I'm going to read it and then like quote some of it and like paraphrase other things of it, just because I don't want to get flagged by the audiobook stuff. I'm always trying to not get sued by Disney. So Hazel's marching down the hill. She is cursing in Latin, and Percy doesn't understand all of it because I guess his Latin hasn't like fully kicked in yet. But here's what he does get from it. Son of a Gorgon. So I guess that's, I can't translate what the curse things are because this isn't All Ages podcast, but I think we can kind of put together some of them. Son of a Gorgon, power-hungry snake. That just feels like a rude thing to say, not necessarily a direct corollary of a curse. And, quote, "a few choice suggestions about where Octavian could stick his knife." Well, I can think of at least one location.
Yeah.
So then she mutters, "I hate that guy." And Percy checks that he's not actually going to get elected as praetor. And she says, quote, "I wish I could be certain. Octavian has a lot of friends. Most of them bought." Ooh, bought. Huh. Like literally? Or just like he's choosy about his predictions. "The rest of the campers are afraid of him." Now, Percy, being the fighter type that he is, asks if they're really afraid of someone so skinny and small, and she tells Percy not to underestimate him. Quote, "Raina's not so bad by herself, but if Octavian shares her power," so I guess if he's also praetor, then Hazel shudders. "Let's go see my brother. He'll want to meet you." Or will he, if it's Nico D'Angelo, will he want to see? That's going to be wild. If it is Nico, that's going to be ridiculous because Nico has his full memory. That could be cool.
Know.
That could be cool because then it could just fast forward past that would be such a fun dynamic because there was no one along Jason's quest that was like, "I know everything about you, Jason," except for like the villains dramatically saying it. It would be funny if Nico has to continuously convince Percy like, no, you're really good at certain fighting things. And Percy's like, "What are you talking about?" Oh man, this could be really fun if I'm right. And if I'm wrong, this will be hilarious. So they say, "Want to meet him?" Narrator Percy doesn't want to argue. He does want to meet this mysterious brother and maybe learn something about Hazel's background, such as who's her dad and what's her secret, because Percy, had this thought that she's like hiding some sort of guilt.
He can read in her eyes she has a secret.
He's always been good at it. So I think it tracks. Now, Percy can't believe that she really could have done anything to be guilty about because she seems so nice. And Octavian, though, has acted like that he's got some really juicy gossip about her. Hazel then leads Percy to a black crypt built into the side of a hill. Oh, that feels like the Temple of Pluto if I've ever heard one.
Demonic vibes.
Standing in front was a standing in front was a teenage boy in black jeans and an aviator jacket. He was eating a Happy Meal and drinking Dr. Pepper. No, that's not what it says. I'm feeling real good. This is great. Hazel then calls to him, quote, "Hey, I've brought a friend." And then it says that the boy turned. Percy had another one of those weird flashes, like this was someone he should know. Let's go. Quote, "The kid was almost as pale as Octavian." Oh man, this is great. What a victory lap. I'm glad I video documented my victory lap for everyone. "But with dark eyes and messy black hair. He didn't look anything like Hazel." Have we gotten a description of what Hazel looks like? Did I forget this already?
If we did, I also forgot it already.
Okay. I don't want to like Google it because I'm afraid it'll be like Hazel, whose big dark secret is that she murdered Grover. Like, I don't want I'm not going to look it up. So we'll just have to see.
I can look it up.
I mean, I don't want you to be spoiled either.
No, I have the first 4 chapters in a document.
Oh,
yeah.
There you go. Yeah, you can just Control F for Hazel. So Didn't look anything like Hazel. He wore a silver skull ring, a chain for a belt, and a black t-shirt with skull designs. At his side hung a pure black sword. Oh, let's go. For a microsecond, when he saw Percy, the boy seemed shocked, panicked even, like he'd been caught in a searchlight. Oh, yep. Okay. So Hazel introduces him as Percy Jackson and says that he's a good guy. And then she says to Percy, "This is my brother, the son of Pluto." And then the final 2 lines quote, "The boy regained his composure and held out his hand. Pleased to meet you," he said. "I'm Nico D'Angelo. Let's go." Yes. Oh, that is fun. Not just because I'm correct and look at me go. I've solved the mystery of a book designed for 10-year-olds, but Nico's back in the mix, baby. Oh, very excited.
I love Nico.
Very excited. Now, I guess this opens the door. Is this Nico on the cover or is it Percy? Because all we can tell is this is someone with black hair and a jacket. You would think that the person on the cover of The Son of Neptune would be Percy, the son of Neptune. But like, you could tell me that's Nico and I can't say no. I can't really see what this guy looks like other than that he's got black hair and a jacket. So I don't know, man. That could be Nico. That could be a big red herring.
Do you put on the edgy Child of Hades uniform when you go down to Hades? You just get a leather jacket and you start being edgy and you start getting skull decor on you? Because, like, is he going to acquire that when he goes to Hades? Are we doing a quest in the underworld?
Oh, I don't know. There's all this ice here. I'm not sure. We don't know what's going on, but oh, what a reveal. Cool. Well, beautiful. So that is the end of chapter 4. I need to retitle it something. And I thought of this joke a while ago and it really just hasn't like found its way to be a chapter title. So I'm just going to use it here in case we can't. I'm going to retitle chapter 4, Boys Go to Camp Jupiter to Get More Stupider. Do you have a retitling of chapter 4?
I was going to do I Reunite with an Acquaintance from Hell.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah. Pretty good. Pretty good. So yes, that is the end of this chapter. That's the end of this episode. Genna, thank you so much for joining. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. Genna, if people want to find you doing stuff, where can they find you doing stuff?
They can find me on the Pages Past podcast. So that's pagespastcast.com and at Pages Past Cast on Instagram. And you can very soon listen to some of your favorite people revisit books that were really, really meaningful to them and they're really far past. Some of these people include people like Mike Schubert, yes. Dr. Stephen Parra.
Yes.
Our friend Alyssa Esteban, frequent guest here, and also
I didn't know Alyssa was
host
on.
of the podcast Breakfast and Beauclair. Yes. And I will hopefully introduce you to some new people like the writer Anne Theriault, Margaret H. Willison, if you know the Harry Potter Sacred Text world.
Yeah.
We have a lot of fun on that podcast doing close readings and reading a little bit beyond the page, doing some of those readings where we try to make connections between the text and other texts, between the text and our own lives, the text and the world. And if you're interested in those kind of beyond the page readings, then you might really enjoy Pages Past. I also think Pages Past might be for you if you have a hard time reading as an adult and you want to get back into reading, going back to texts that held us in those iron grips when we were younger, and those formative books that can just be revisiting those texts can be a great way to get excited about reading again. I hope that you will join us on Pages Past, and my Patreon is free, and if you would like to stay up to date on what's going on my show and what books we're going to be reading, you do not need to read the book to enjoy the show. But if you would like to, you can. And I give you a heads up. And you can go to patreon.com/pagespast, P-A-S-T for that.
Amazing. Great. Well, Genna, thank you so much for joining. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. Of course, stream people, thank you for streaming. And replay Patreon people, thank you for replay Patreoning. If you're watching it, it means you support, so that's really cool and I really appreciate it. But until next time, as we figure out what Nico's going to say to Percy Jackson, until then, I'll see you later. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamontes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you love the podcast and you just can't get enough, there's a couple of different things you can do. First, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. You can join the Patreon and you can get access to a whole bunch of fun bonus content. You can also follow us on social media. We're at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. There's also a subreddit, reddit.com/r/thenewestolympian. And there's also the TNO Discord Discord, which you get access to by joining any TNO tier on the Patreon. You can learn all about the show at thenewsolympian.com, and you can get some sweet TNO merch at thenewsolympian.com/merch. I've mentioned the Patreon, so let's give a shout out to our producer level patrons: Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Vicky Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Sabrina Balsiger, Polly Burge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Josh Sayer, Josh Wilkie, Abby Ryan, Marco Redhouse, Sam Reeby, Mrs. O'Leary, Milo Kim, Sandkoff, Rika, Ryla Matthews, Sky Mallory, Persasabeth, Aiden Parziani, Grace, Ginger Spursboy, A Cup of Solace, Bradimus Prime, Skylar Sisters, Scott Sheldon, Sophie, Natanya Page, Ann M. Thayer Cohen, Bella, Percy Jackson, Han, Haley Hingelheimer Schmidt, Catherine Sloan, Jessica Phillips, Haley Mary, Jim Jam Koopy, Kit Kat Crumbs, and Andrea, not Andrea. If you want to support the show in a non-monetary way, just tell someone about the podcast. It really does help a lot, whether that is you reaching out to someone directly who you think might enjoy the podcast. Maybe they're a big Percy Jackson fan, maybe they've been looking for an excuse to read the books, or if you post about the show on social media, or you leave us a rating and review on whatever podcasting app you're using. Truly, all of these things help. I really appreciate anyone who has done it in the past, and I also appreciate anyone who will do it in the future. But I'm just so thankful that you tuned into this episode, and I hope you tune into our next episode, where we'll be joined by Genna Stewart to break down chapters 5 and 6 of The Son of Neptune. But until then, I'll see you later. Hey everyone, how's it going? It's me, ASMR Mike. So I'm here in the studio, and recently I was a guest on a podcast that did a video recording as well, so I needed my hair to look good, and I still have my brush in the studio here, so I'm just going to kind of rub my thumbs along the bristles of the brush for this ASMR Mike segment. Thank you so much for listening.